Kia ora koto katoa to all of the Otago Southland Branch of ARANZ members at the AGM today on the 27th of August, 2025. Um, First of all, my apologies that I couldn't be with you either in person or online at the present. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a clash with me and my wife's priorities, family priorities, as well as we're all getting over the flu at the moment, as you can probably tell. So I've recorded this and didn't want to let down Claire and you guys for presenting at the AGM this year. My presentation this year was about the Peter Bush archive and setting that up pretty much from scratch. So I'll just share my screen here and we'll get into it. All right. So that's Peter right there. And I've copied over the title A Legacy in Light, which some of you may have read in the ARANZ Artifacts article I wrote back last year as well. Yeah, well, I know a lot of you probably already know me, so I'll go through this pretty quickly. I've spent 15 years in the GLAM and IM sector. I'm currently a board member of the New Zealand Archives Council. Of course, I'm now first past president of ARANZ. And I guess most importantly to this conversation, I was a trust board member at Te Manawa, and I was also an archivist at Palmerston North City Library, so I have quite a bit of connection to Palmerston North and Te Manawa through that and through this project. Right. Peter Bush was born in Stanley Bay in Auckland, 16th of October 1930. His mother, Louise, was a hotel receptionist, and his father was Maurice, a commercial traveler. Peter's primarily spent most of his life in Kumara, which is 30 kilometers northeast of Hokitika. Um, Very rural place. Did a lot of scallywagging with his friends back in the day. If you read any of his books, he has just an amazing plethora of stories to tell about his early years. When he was 10, he was sent up to Star of the Sea in Wellington, and then on to Sacred Heart in Auckland. And he enjoyed cricket and rowing, but it was at Sacred Heart that he discovered his love of rugby. And one of the best quotes that I pulled from his book was, "I went from third in class to 37th, an extraordinary feat given that there were only 32 pupils in the class." All right. Um, Peter's first camera was a box Brownie. He managed to pick it up through one of his first jobs. I believe it was helping to harvest kumara up in the Nelson region. He had his first job with the Herald and then the Truth. Um, and he bought his first and only house in Ofiro Bay in Wellington in 1969, and pretty much sight unseen asked the real estate agent what it was like, said it was pretty much all he needed and went ahead and bought it. Um, and of course, Peter took a camera everywhere. The family used to joke that the only exception to that was when he went to the bathroom. We found some interesting photos and through the collection as we've gone through them because of that. Um, Peter's had one hell of an amazing journey. Every what he's well known for is all those pictures of the All Blacks. He seems to have been one of the All Blacks for about 60 odd years. He seemed to be part of the team. He was literally at every test match, every tour overseas and everything. But the more important part that's coming, sorry, not the more important part, the other part of his life that is now coming out is the social and political and um, recording of that section of New Zealand life from the late 1950s to early 2000s that we're going through with the whole arrangement description of his archives at Te Manawa. So this includes images of life in the army during the Malayan emergency. This includes a single photograph of the infamous man-eating tiger shot. So if you haven't seen it, it's pretty much a giant tiger tied to the back of a car, which had been shot and had been terrorizing a village for a while. And the rumor was that it was being sent off to be ground down into um, Chinese medicine and herbs and stuff. And Peter reflected on it later in life, saying, "Oh, it was such a beautiful animal, but at the time it was causing so much havoc." And he was a little bit torn between the single shot that he took and um, how that beast ended up on the back of a car. Um, he took some amazing shots of the Beatles tour of New Zealand, primarily when they were in Wellington. One of my favorite ones is the Beatles stepping off a jetliner and taking photos with the cabin crew and everything, and Ringo Starr hitting George Harrison in the head with a poi. There was the visit of Lyndon Johnson in 1966. That was to shore up support for the war in Vietnam. And he was the first president of the United States to visit New Zealand. There's also the only known color images of the Wahine singing in 1968. The 1975 Hikoi, British and Irish Lions Tour of New Zealand, 1995 Rugby World Cup held in South Africa. There's some good shots of Jonah Lomu and such in there as well, and many, many more. Um, as we as we went through these boxes, as we opened up each one, we just realized every single one was full of treasure and gold. And it was really hard to choose a box to start working on because every single one was just magic pretty much. So we had to start somewhere, and those are the primary ones that I got through in my time working on the project. So going back to the beginning, there was a call for help from Rachel Bush initially. Peter had retired in the late 2010s. These are images of his house in Ophir Bay. He was 91 at the time, and there was an estimate of 300,000 images stored in the house. The upstairs had been converted into a dark room. There was Peter's office. And as you can see there was just masses and masses of both archives and primarily negatives and positives up there, as well as his camera gear. And then downstairs, he had all of his 35 millimeter negatives stored in big filing cabinets as well. So it was taking up quite a bit of the house. And it was time for it to find a better, more permanent home with good environmental conditions. So Rachel initially reached out to ATL Te Papa and Auckland libraries, but they couldn't accept it for various reasons, primarily because of storage conditions, unfortunately. As everyone knows in our sector, storage is always at a premium. Private collectors were turned down, and turned down twice for funding by Creative New Zealand, as it was an unquantified collection and there was no current permanent home. So that kind of led to a chicken and egg scenario, but I'll get to that later. In the Radio New Zealand interview with Rachel Bush, I have a link there, but if you put the title in, you can get onto it there, find it pretty easily. She just goes over her dad's life as well as what's needed. Rachel works at Motat, so she's well aware of the museum sector and how these things go and how tight our resources are, unfortunately. And the quote I pulled out from that from Rachel was heritage sector equivalent of the long distance drop goal, which she was looking for. With No resourcing and no home, unfortunately. So after hearing that, I put my thinking cap on. Um, if any of you have been to Palmerston North, I hope you've been to Manawa. It's a very cool little art gallery, science center, and museum. It's also home to the New Zealand Rugby Museum. So this was a natural home because of its co-location of those institutions. Not only the rugby, but also the social history. So it could cover the full gamut of everything that Peter caught over time. The partnership and funding for the advancement of the project, sufficient storage space to take the entire collection. Um, there's already environmentally controlled storage available, specialist knowledge and dedicated volunteers. There was hardware, software, and a database already sent up, and that's helped through the council PNCC. And of course, there's awesome exhibition and research potential there, both on the social and rugby side of everything. So creating the business case, that was fell to me. Um, we initially made a discovery report, initiated in early 2023, after I received approval from the board and myself, Susanna Shadbolt, who's the CEO of Tamanawa, as well as Peter Berg, who's the Rugby Museum CE as well. We paid a visit to Peter and the family home, met Rachel and Johnny and Peter's wife as well. So we just did a quick initial assessment of feasibility of housing the entire collection at Tamanawa. Luckily, there was a nice big room that wasn't being used where nice new mobile shelving could be laid down. So that was easy. Secure long and short-term funding. That was a bit more of a problem, as I said earlier, with the creative funding applications. There's various options available and risk analysis that we had to weigh up and mitigate for. There's the team set up and training. There were people within the museum who did have archives experience, but weren't per se archivists. And there were people that were willing to be seconded, but because of the size and scale of the project, we needed to go out to market to get another one or two people to join the project and get it up and running. And then, of course, we needed to do cost forecasting as well with a project of this size. So it was important to show how Tamanawa's, the New Zealand Rugby Museums and Palmerston North City Council's visions and goals all aligned. So it took a little bit of thinking to get all those together. A useful document applying for future funding opportunities. So if you do create a business case, it's very easy to, not easy, it's good to get all of this written down. You have the background, all the facts in front of you. So if you do have a long-term 5, 10, 15-year project, which does require future funding, you have that kind of one source of truth to, right at the beginning, which you can refer back to and hopefully add on to in the future as well with your funding. And then there's the being careful to balance the risks and mitigation techniques with opportunities. And this one threw up a huge amount of opportunities. So just going to securing funding. The Peter M. Ackland Foundation generously provided $45,000 of funding to kickstart the project. This was after the Radio New Zealand interview, and I believe once I'd started writing the business case, so that was a really good start to things. 1/3 of that went towards reboxing and transfer, new shelving, and organizing and cataloging and describing to series level. So we kind of went on the premise that this might be the only funding that we received for the project, whereby we would have one archivist working on it to bring everything into house, have it nice and stable, new environmentally controlled areas, shelving, rebox, don't have to worry about that risk anymore. And then we can start the arranging and describing and accessioning and appraising process there. And then the remaining two-thirds were ring fenced to develop an exhibition for Peter Bush later on. The New Zealand Rugby Museum also contributed $20,000 towards exhibition costs. And applied for external fundings from Lottery and ECCT in early 2023. So much later down the track that year, once the business case had been approved, given to the board, and the collection had been transferred over to Tamanawa, we received, I think it was 60% of what we had requested, because we requested about 2 years worth of funding. So they gave us about a year and a bit's worth, which was $215,000, which is quite a bit, of course, and got the ball rolling. And we managed to have not only myself, but also two other people involved in the project. So I ended up being the project lead and basically setting up the archive, training two extra archivists, and getting the ball rolling there. Yeah, sorry. So setting up the archives. Um, so within Tamanawa, there was no archival unit in existence at that point. And Peter Bush was going to end up being the core of the collection, from which an archive was going to be built for the future. So there's new shelving in the dedicated space. I believe they ended up getting just over 100 linear meters put in the basement along in a dedicated kind of sub room right next to the main collection. Yes, it had to modify Vernon spreadsheets for bulk uploads. That was a lot of fun. We had to set cataloging targets, and of course, buy all the consumables, upgrade digitization equipment, liaise with IT on storage priority list, blah, blah, blah. And that's not only that, but also training two people who had very minimal experience in archives as well. So it was a lot of team meetings, learning things on the fly, a lot of phone calls back and forth. As you can imagine, I'm in Christchurch there in Palmerston North. We managed to make it work pretty well, and build ourselves up as a pretty good team in the end. But the steps I've got there, it just ends up being a waterfall if you are setting up something from scratch, which is pretty much a rarity these days. Um, it's just going strategy down to policy, and then which flows onto your standard operating procedures, and then implementing your best practice and standards. Not rocket surgery. So this is just a screenshot of everything that I created in regards to documents. A lot of people laugh because SOPs, most people read them once, if at all, and then they get forgotten about, unfortunately. But I was persistent with my team and said, you can ask me questions, but I'm going to keep referring you back to the SOP if you keep asking me the same questions over and over again. So it was good to have everything written down, and I think they appreciated that, especially after funding ran out for me on the project and I had to leave. So it's always good to get these things down. You never know if somebody in your organization who holds all this information is going to get hit by a bus the next day, and it's all just going to go away. So, right, promotion and marketing. Oh, excuse me. So there was a dedicated Peter Bush archive webpage, which has recently been set up and is now online. I suggest you go and check it out. It's pretty cool. It has quite a few of the digitized images that we've done over the past year and a half on there. It also includes news blogs and updates to the project. There was a rugby jamboree auction. So this was, I think, within the first month or two of the project kicking off. It was really quick. And there was a silent auction of 12 prints, which raised over $1,000. So that was some of Peter Bush's more famous rugby shots over time. And then we had another Peter Bush charity auction evening. We had former Black Ferns captain Dame Farrah Palmer as well as Hamish Mackay come in and MC for us. There was a signed copy of Dan Carter's book, 1958. There's a signed photo by Peter. Sorry, that's a typo there. Um, in that image there, that was taken by Peter Bush of Dan Carter and signed by Dan Carter. I won the auction for it. It's currently hanging up in my office right above me. And then there's the entry badges, tour pins, and flags, etc. And we raised over $8,000 for that, which went straight back into the project. So that was a really good outcome and managed to extend some of the work that we were doing there. And then we had talks and presentations to local groups going on at the same time as well. So as I said before, peterbush.co.nz, check it out. It's a standalone front end and database for Peter Bush material specifically, so it's quite separate from the core Tamanawa collection. It's based on the Vernon platform and arranged through archival series. So it's archival first. There's currently 2,049 items on there, 1,500 of them being images. And I've taken a picture there. Looks like, oh yeah, they're the rallies against apartheid and the All Blacks tour of South Africa and the protests that took part in 1970 there. And there's the ability to add relational links and link to other Tamanawa objects, which is going to be a future development. And we're really hopeful that Digital NZ also has API already set up with Tamanawa so that it can be easily harvested. And they should start harvesting this site soon as well now that it's online. So council support was critical to this. As I said before, there was alignment with Palmerston North City Council's goals and plans. There's goal 2 there, a creative and exciting city. That definitely added to it. And then the arts and heritage plan, which said the arts sector hosts diverse arts experience and has resources to grow its audiences. So the collection as a whole needs the context built around it, but it also needs researchers to come in and disperse that information a bit, as well as have the curators use it. The marketing people pick it up within Tamanawa as well. On 31st of May 2023, Palmerston North City Council agreed to an extra 250,000 funding to Tamanawa. So that was for multiple projects. The Rangi Whenua exhibition redevelopment there, getting the Six Extinctions Dinosaurs exhibition in, which was really cool. And of course, the Peter Bush Archive. And then PNCC later agreed to a general funding increase of 190,000 to Tamanawa to continue project work beyond the first year. So Palmerston North City Council has been really supportive of both Tamanawa as well as this project. They've really picked up on the potential and opportunities that having a collection of this size and wealth bring to the region, especially a smaller regional one rather than going to, say, Auckland or Wellington. So the feature Peter Bush exhibition, it's currently in development and entitled Out in the Field. That may change, I'm not sure yet, early days. The exhibition will see Peter Bush become a guide through the social and sporting history of Aotearoa. there's a stage one and a stage two being set up. So the first one is including 60 images on a discovery wall. Um, there's a selection of physical objects will be displayed showing Peter's historical photographs and links to other objects. So within the collection, there was quite a bit of his ephemera, and we also received quite a few of his cameras that he used. Um, there will be over 100 images displayed on an interactive digital kiosk. And stage two will be the story of Peter Bush, developed to expand on that initial first stage. So the future potential of the collection. Um, so as I've said before, there's an amazing amount of important images and records that require deep research that can add context. I mean, I think there's multiple PhDs that could be written using the items that are within the collection. There's a huge amount of exhibition potential there as well. Um, Utilizing various media from the collection to add to social history and rugby museum exhibitions. Um, as I said before, you can harvest the peterbush.co.nz via the digital NZ API and content aggregation for exposure. Funding opportunities to accelerate project work, and an application to the New Zealand Memory of the World Program for inclusion on the list. Hopefully, once a lot more of the collection is arranged and described and known. So this is a photograph from when me, Susanna, sorry, I'll go left to right there. There's myself, Susanna Shadbolt, Rachel Bush, Peter Bush, and Peter Berg there. And that was from the visit. Peter was 92 at the time. I think he was a little bit sick at the time, but he was sharp as a tack, told us many stories. He had so many stories. It was just unbelievable. He had a story about everything. You could probably sit there with him there for a week and he would probably talk the entire time about everything in life. And one of the quotes I wanted to end on was from Rachel Bush, within the obituary for her father. And that was, my father was a powerful life force, a man teeming with energy, adventure, and laughter, a self-made professional with a relentless passion for capturing the perfect moment, a lover of the outdoors, a hater of bureaucracy, an epic storyteller, and a friend and mentor to so many. And unfortunately, Peter died not long after we visited, and the collection was taken in December of 2023. And then, of course, there's can't end off a presentation on photography and the amazing stuff within it without actually showing you some of the photographs. So this is one of the earliest photographs Peter took on his trip throughout Europe. This one's in Austria of the Alps, I believe. Oh, Innsbruck. Sorry, I've got the reference right there. This one, the Beatles arriving in Wellington in 1964. Not the one of Ringo Starr bashing with a poi on the head, unfortunately. But nevertheless, a very cool photo. This one's LBJ visiting, getting out of his presidential limo, which apparently the Secret Service agents at the time were very not impressed with, and talking to the Wellingtonians at the time. I don't think they realized how laid back New Zealand was at the time, and that this was definitely not America. Um, and then, of course, there's the one of the pictures of the Wahine disaster, 11th of April, 1968. I believe Peter took that from one of the beaches over on the, oh, I can't remember which beach it was, sorry. And it's looking over towards Eastbourne in the distance. And then there's the Springboks protest in Manawatu in 1981 there. And then one of my other favorites here is David Bowie when he visited in 1983. I think it had held the record for the largest attendance at a rock gig. I think it was over 250,000 people at Western Springs um, at the time. Amazing concert, apparently. And last one is of Diana, Princess of Wales, meeting children in April 1983. I believe that one is also on the streets of Wellington. There's quite a contrast there with the pictures of Prince Philip, who didn't get nearly as much attention. It was looking a little bit forlorn as well. So, right. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Once again, I'm very sorry that I can't be with everyone in person, but I hope that this was a good overview for everyone of not only setting up an archive, but of all the amazing work that Peter Bush undertook throughout his life. Um, if you want to get in contact with me or ask any questions, just give me a email at either evan.greensides@gmail.com or evan@egconsulting.co.nz, and I will happily answer any of them. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the AGM. See you later. Bye.